welcome to the Cabinet of Science and Fiction.
Great to be here.
Today we're taking a deep dive into a really, truly thought-provoking book, Jacques Vallée's Passport to Magonia.
It's definitely a classic in the field, and it asks some, well, uncomfortable questions.
Exactly. Now, before we really get into the core of Vallée's fascinating and, frankly, quite strange ideas, maybe we should touch on who he is. Because, this isn't just some random speculation we're looking at here.
No, not at all. Vallée's background is crucial. He's a respected computer scientist, an astrophysicist. He was involved with Project Blue Book, even. He has a long, serious track record in studying unexplained aerial phenomena.
Right, so he comes at it from a scientific perspective, which gives his exploration in Passport to Magonia this unique weight, doesn't it?
Yep.
It kind of pushes us to reconsider some very fundamental assumptions about what we think we know.
Absolutely. It makes you pause and think, okay, this isn't just fringe stuff. There's a rigorous mind looking at this data.
So with that context, what's the central, almost revolutionary idea that Vallée puts forward in this book? What's the big takeaway?
Well, it's really a perspective shift, a big one. Instead of just focusing on the standard extraterrestrial hypothesis, aliens and spaceships, which dominates a lot of UFO talk.
The nuts and bolts stuff.
Exactly. Vallée proposes something much more complex. He suggests that the modern belief in UFOs and their occupants, well, it looks remarkably similar to much older beliefs in fairies, elves, elementals, all those beings from folklore.
Fairies and UFOs, that sounds like a leap initially.
It does, but he argues we might be dealing with manifestations from maybe a parallel world or some kind of adjacent reality, rather than just visitors from other planets in conventional spacecraft.
Okay, a parallel world, that definitely grabs your attention. And he doesn't just, throw that out there, right?
Yes.
He builds a case using historical accounts.
Precisely. He digs deep into history. For instance, he starts with that archaeological find in Palenque in the Yucatan.
Yes, the sarcophagus lid.
Right. Now, mainstream archaeology has its own interpretations, of course. But Vallée highlights how some people, like the Soviet scientist Alexander Kazantsev back in the day, looked at that relief carving and saw, well, something else.
Something like ancient contact.
Kazantsev suggested it could depict contact with a superior civilization, maybe using what he called astronavs. Vallée notes the visual resemblance, to a modern space capsule. He's not saying it is a space capsule, but he highlights that similarity. It immediately makes you think, could these motifs, these images, keep recurring across huge spans of time? It plants that seed.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if we're seeing patterns or maybe interpreting things through our own technological lens, even ancient things.
Or maybe something deeper in our collective consciousness is responding to certain stimuli, perhaps.
It's a powerful opening image anyway. Then he moves into written records, doesn't he? From Japan, specifically.
Yes, and this is where the consistency over time starts to look really interesting. He brings up Japanese records going way back, like to 989 AD.
Wow, that's early.
It is. Descriptions of unusual, round, bright objects, even reports of them appearing to merge together. Then, jump to 1361, there's an account of a drum-shaped object actually coming out of the sea.
Out of the sea, not just the sky.
Right. And later, 1458, a very bright object, like a full moon, appears, followed by what the records call curious signs. It apparently caused a lot of consternation, widespread worry.
Understandable, I guess.
And then another one, 1468, a dark object making a sound like a wheel. These descriptions, they're specific, they're recorded, they suggest people were seeing something unusual consistently long before modern technology.
A drum-shaped object, a sound like a wheel. There's such vivid details. It really drives home how people back then must have struggled to categorize these things. So from Japan, Vallée shifts to medieval Europe and the folklore there.
Exactly. This is where he really starts weaving the threads together. He looks at medieval European folklore and points out the common belief in, well, ships sailing through the clouds.
Cloud ships?
Yeah. Sometimes they were even thought to be transporting crops damaged by hail. There were stories of people offering rewards to tempest wizards who supposedly controlled these things and the weather.
Tempest wizards, wow.
And he recounts this fascinating incident in Lyon. 4 people claimed they'd fallen from one of these aerial ships. They nearly got stoned by the locals.
Seriously?
Yeah, but Bishop Agobard, a powerful church figure, stepped in. He basically declared their claims false, impossible, because they didn't fit the accepted religious worldview. His authority just overruled the eyewitness accounts.
So that dynamic of official dismissal, even in the face of testimony, isn't new.
Not at all. It shows how hard it can be for experiences that challenge the status quo to be accepted then or now. And within that medieval world, there was also this strong belief in non-human entities, right?
Ah,
Elementals and such.
yes, Paracelsus wrote about them.
Exactly. Elementals beings tied to earth, air, fire, water. They were a big deal for Hermetic thinkers like Paracelsus. He wrote about their nature, but also warned about the dangers of interacting with them.
So this idea of other intelligences, maybe existing alongside us but unseen, it has deep roots.
It seems to be a persistent thread in human thought, this fascination with, and sometimes fear of, non-human entities.
It's like we've always sensed something else out there, or maybe needed to believe it. So how does Vallée specifically connect these older beliefs to, say, 20th century UFO reports? What are the parallels he draws?
He gives several really compelling examples. There's one from 1768, a student traveling to Leipzig. He sees this strange, illuminated amphitheater in the distance, full of countless lights moving erratically.
An amphitheater of lights.
Yeah. And the coachman just dismisses it, saying, oh, it's probably just an old quarry filled with water.
A mundane explanation for something bizarre. Sounds familiar.
Right. It highlights that tendency to rationalize, even when the explanation doesn't quite fit. But Vallée's main point is how, especially after World War II, say from 1946 onwards, stories started cropping up globally that sounded uncannily like that old folklore, just framed in modern technological terms.
Okay, like the Socorro incident. Lonnie Zamora, that's a classic case.
Exactly. Socorro, New Mexico, 1964. Police officer Lonnie Zamora chases a speeding car, hears a roar, sees flames, and finds this. Ovoid object landed in a gully with two small figures in white coveralls beside it.
And they see him and take off?
They seem startled, get back in, and the object takes off silently at first after that initial roar, leaving landing gear impressions behind. What Vallée points out is Zamora's reaction. He was deeply shaken. He felt compelled to see a priest afterwards.
That emotional impact.
Yes, Vallée says it has this almost medieval emotional undertone. It's like an encounter with something so outside normal reality that it triggers a deep, almost religious or existential response, much like those older encounters with the supernatural.
That makes sense. It wasn't just seeing something weird. It was profoundly unsettling. What about some of the stranger cases, the really high strangeness ones, like Joe Simonton?
Ah, the pancakes. Yes, Joe Simonton, Eagle River, Wisconsin, 1961. A chicken farmer claims this metallic craft landed. Beings inside gave him 4 hot pancakes.
Pancakes. It's just so mundane and bizarre simultaneously.
It really is, and Vallée jumps right on this. He compares it directly to fairy tales, where humans and the good people, the fairies, exchange food. Anthropologists like Edwin Hartland studied these food offerings in folklore, suggesting they had ritualistic or symbolic meaning.
So maybe the pancakes weren't just lunch. Maybe it was part of some kind of interaction or exchange we don't understand.
That's what Vallée suggests. Maybe there's a pattern, a symbolic language almost in these interactions that echoes down through centuries, even if the details seem absurd on the surface.
It certainly makes you rethink encounters that seem too silly to be real. The absurdity might be part of the phenomenon itself. What about animals? You mentioned fairies and animals earlier.
Yes, another recurring theme. He brings up the case of Snippy the horse in Colorado, 1967, found dead, surgically mutilated in a very precise, unusual way, brain and certain organs removed, completely drained of blood, no tracks around the body.
That case is notorious.
Yeah.
Very disturbing.
And there were reports around the same time by an elderly woman nearby of seeing a large silent object maneuvering overhead. Vallée connects this to fairy lore, where fairies are sometimes described chasing or harming animals or taking them. Again, it's this parallel between unexplained modern events and older folkloric motifs.
And wasn't there a more recent case involving a dog? Something in New Jersey?
Yes, a more contemporary account he references. A witness reports encountering a strange, putty-faced being who apparently tried to lure their dog away.
Putty face.
That was the description, and the being supposedly said, "We are peace people, we only want your dog."
We only want your dog. That is just weird.
It's utterly bizarre, but again, it mirrors those old tales of fairies wanting animals, or even children, for their own inscrutable reasons. The nonsensical statement, the odd appearance, it feels very folkloric.
It really does blur the lines. Modern setting, strange being, nonsensical request.
Yeah.
Feels like a folktale playing out now. This leads Vallée to question the power of belief itself, doesn't it?
He does. He wonders aloud, essentially. Could imagination and belief actually be more powerful forces in shaping human actions? maybe even perceptions, than established institutions or even physical reality as we understand it. He floats the idea of a potential science of belief.
A science of belief, what would that even look like?
It's provocative.
Hmm.
Maybe suggesting our collective beliefs or expectations somehow interact with or even shape these phenomena, or at least how we experience and report them. It puts the observer right back into the equation in a fundamental way.
That's a deep thought, that we might be co-creating these experiences somehow through belief. And didn't the good people in folklore sometimes make rather unsettling claims about themselves?
Yes, that's another parallel. Historical accounts sometimes depict the good people or fairies claiming they're superior to humans, sometimes even making threats, like saying they would reduce the human population.
This doesn't sound very friendly or whimsical.
No, it adds this element of otherness, maybe even potential danger, which you also find in some modern UFO contactee narratives. It's not always benevolent beings bringing enlightenment. Sometimes there's this undercurrent of something alien and potentially powerful, perhaps even indifferent or hostile.
That sense of encountering something fundamentally different, maybe superior, maybe dangerous, that seems consistent. Let's shift gears slightly. What about physical evidence? Vallée doesn't ignore that, does he?
Not at all. He examines cases with tangible traces. The 1954 Courrouble incident in France is a prime example. Maurice de Wilde, a metalworker, sees two small beings near a dark object on the railway tracks behind his house.
Right, and he gets paralyzed by a light beam.
Yes, he reported being hit by an orange light from the object and was temporarily paralyzed. Crucially, after the object took off, investigators found deep indentations on the railway sleepers, the wooden ties. Calculations suggested they were caused by something weighing around 30 tons.
30 tons. That's substantial. Hard to fake or explain away easily.
It really is. It moves the encounter beyond just subjective experience into the realm of measurable physical effects. And this wasn't an isolated case around that time, was it?
No. Vallée points out that the mid-20th century, especially the 1950s, saw a wave of landing reports from all over the world. Italy, France, Brazil, Australia, Canada, the U.S.
And they shared features, right? Like silent takeoffs, strange lights.
Exactly. Reports of beings in different outfits, sometimes dark suits and helmets, sometimes silvery jumpsuits. Physical effects on witnesses like paralysis or lingering strange smells or ground traces.
That global distribution, combined with recurring specific details, it makes it harder to dismiss everything as isolated misidentifications or hoaxes. It suggests a pattern.
A very weird pattern playing out everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, one of the most famous cases, certainly in abduction literature, is Betty and Barney Hill. How does Vallée fit their experience into his Magonia framework?
He discusses the Hill case, which happened in 1961, but the details really emerged later under hypnosis. He notes how, as they recalled more, their story started to align with details from other UFO landing reports that they couldn't possibly have known about consciously at the time.
Like what kind of details?
Things like Betty's description of a small device, maybe for testing, that resembled a pencil. He also looks at Betty's reported mental communication with the beings. Vallée annexed this to something called the apparition theory.
Apparition theory.
The idea that some of these experiences might involve a sort of high-level activation of the witness's own perceptual system, maybe triggered externally, maybe not entirely physical in the way we usually think. It could potentially explain some of the more surreal, symbolic, or dreamlike qualities reported in abductions.
So not necessarily a literal physical transport onto a craft, but maybe a complex interaction involving perception and consciousness. That ties back into the folklore idea, doesn't it?
It does. It allows for the possibility that the experience is profoundly real for the person, but might operate under different rules than everyday reality. And this connects directly back to those shared motifs, like abduction itself.
Right. The theme of beings taking humans. That's huge in fairy lore, too.
Absolutely huge. Fairies abducting people, especially pregnant women, young mothers, babies, children, and the really disturbing idea of them leaving behind a changeling.
Ugh, the changeling stories are creepy.
Yeah.
Like a bundle of sticks or something unwell left in place of the real child.
Exactly. Often described as sickly or made of rags or just wrong. That same motif appears in modern UFO abduction lore. The fear of something being taken, something being replaced, something alien infiltrating the human sphere. The parallels are undeniable.
It taps into such primal fears. And another parallel Vallée highlights is time distortion, right? Time working differently.
Yes, the classic folklore trope of time passing differently in the fairy realm or the other world. Someone visits for what feels like a day, comes back, and decades or centuries have passed in the human world. The story of Oysen returning from Tir na Nog is a famous example.
And he finds echoes of this in UFO cases.
He does. He mentions, for instance, the Antonio Villas-Boas case from Brazil in 1957. During his alleged time aboard a craft, Villas-Boas saw a clock, but it had no hands. And apparently there was an inscription that translated to something like, "It is later than you think."
Wow. It is later than you think. That's cryptic and perfectly captures that sense of dislocated time.
It adds this layer of temporal disorientation, that feeling of stepping outside normal time, which is so characteristic of both folkloric encounters and some modern abduction reports.
It really reinforces that sense of encountering a different reality with different rules. What about the gifts again? You mentioned the pancakes. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, the broader folklore motif is that fairies sometimes give gifts that seem worthless, like coal or dead leaves. But later, under specific conditions, they turn into gold or treasure.
Oh, okay.
Vallée parallels this with things like Simonton's pancakes. Maybe these seemingly mundane or useless objects given in encounters have a symbolic meaning or function within the interaction itself, even if it's opaque to us. It's about the exchange, perhaps, more than the object.
A symbolic interaction, a different kind of communication. Now, Vallée also covers something that predates the modern UFO era, but feels strangely technological. The airship sightings of the 1890s.
Yes, the Great Airship Wave, mainly 1896-97. Widespread reports, first in California, then the Midwest, of large, dark, often cigar-shaped objects with bright lights, sometimes with wings or propellers reported, capable of flying against the wind, which was remarkable for the time.
And there were occupant reports, too, weren't there?
There were. Vallée mentions the account by Alexander Hamilton, an attorney in Kansas, who claimed to see beings inside a sort of glass cabin on one airship. And the truly bizarre story of Robert Hibbard, who claimed an anchor was dropped from an airship, snagged him briefly, and dragged him before breaking loose.
Dragged by an anchor from a mystery airship. That sounds like something out of Jules Verne, but people reported it seriously.
Exactly. These sightings seem almost proto-technological, but they also have these fantastical high-strangeness elements. They really blur the lines, fitting neatly into neither simple folklore nor conventional technology of the era. They occupy that same ambiguous space Vallée is exploring.
It's like the phenomenon adapts its appearance to the expectations or the technological context of the time, maybe.
That's one interpretation Vallée seems to lean towards. The form changes, but the underlying interaction might have constants. He even touches upon religious visions in this context.
Like Marian apparitions.
Yes, he mentions the apparition at Knock, Ireland, in 1879, where multiple witnesses saw figures they identified as Mary, Joseph, and St. John the Evangelist. He also briefly references Juan Diego and the Virgin of Guadalupe in Mexico.
How does he connect those to UFOs or fairies? Is he saying they are the same thing?
No, not equating them directly, but he suggests that these events, visionary experiences, often involving seemingly impossible occurrences and sometimes leaving tangible signs, like the image on Juan Diego's tilma, exist on a spectrum of human encounters with the extraordinary. He thinks they warrant study by anyone interested in the human mind, belief, and how we perceive and report anomalous events, regardless of the specific cultural or religious framework used to interpret them.
So looking at the phenomena of the experience, the structure of it, rather than accepting just one interpretation.
Precisely. Looking for underlying patterns in how humans experience and interact with what seems to be other. Of course, Vallée is very aware of hoaxes and misinterpretations in all of this.
He has to be, right?
Mhm.
How does he deal with the possibility that many reports are just wrong?
He fully acknowledges it. He knows hoaxes happen, people misidentify planes or weather balloons, psychological factors play a role. But he argues that dismissing everything because of that is throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Because of the consistency.
Yes. His core argument hinges on the sheer volume, the global distribution, and especially the remarkable consistency of certain specific, often bizarre details and narrative structures, the motifs that repeat across centuries and cultures, reported by apparently credible people who often have nothing to gain, and sometimes much to lose, by reporting them.
Those recurring patterns.
Mm-hmm.
The small beings, the paralysis, the time distortion, the abductions, the strange gifts.
Exactly. He argues that this persistent pattern is hard to explain away entirely as just coincidence, cultural diffusion, or individual fabrication. It suggests to him that there's a genuine underlying phenomenon there. Maybe not extraterrestrial visitors in the simple sense, but something real, something interacting with us, something that plugs into our folklore and our deepest beliefs.
It's that persistence. That echo across time that really makes Passport to Magonia so compelling, doesn't it? Even if it leaves you with more questions than answers. It challenges that simple ET hypothesis fundamentally.
It absolutely does. As we've kind of unpacked in this dive, the lines Vallée draws between ancient folklore and modern UFO reports are surprisingly, maybe even disturbingly blurred. His work really forces you, or invites you anyway, to consider perspectives way beyond simple space aliens.
Yeah, those recurring themes, the strange beings, the objects in the sky, the feeling of being taken, the weird exchanges, the time weirdness. It all points to something much more complex, much more deeply woven into human experience than maybe we first thought.
And it just opens up these profound questions, doesn't it, about reality itself, the nature of consciousness, the power of belief, and this potential for other forms of intelligence or maybe even other dimensions interacting with our world in ways we're only just starting to maybe get a handle on.
So wrapping up, what do you, listening now, make of these striking similarities Vallée points out? Does it all boil down to psychology? A persistent cultural story we keep telling ourselves in different forms?
Or is it evidence of something else, something genuinely external, maybe interdimensional, that manifests in ways shaped by our own cultural expectations?
Or something stranger still that we don't even have the concepts for yet? It's clear, as Vallée suggests, that this is just scratching the surface of a much larger, much deeper conversation.
Indeed. Passport to Magonia doesn't give easy answers, but it provides this incredibly rich, alternative framework for thinking about these enduring mysteries. A vital contribution, I think.
Absolutely. It certainly gives you a lot to chew on.
It definitely does.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Until next episode.